Councilmember O'Hara?
Well, thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor again. And I just ask everyone's support for this and open it up to the rest of the council for comment.
As some of you may or may not know, I was the subject of a local newspaper cartoon. It was me floating around in a bowl of styrofoam in Hilo Bay, I'm presuming. Dead fish, a couple turtles over there. The first thing my daughter said was, "Hey, Dad, do you wear a watch?" I said, "No, I don't." And, so that was incorrect already. But aside from that, and aside from the fact that my kids are now calling me, Dad, the fish killer, I wanted to thank Miss O'Hara. And this is really, talking about the respect that each of us have on the council. She called me up. She said, "Hey, Aaron, how you doing?" I didn't have anything to do with that. I said, "No, Eileen, I know you didn't have anything to do with that." I said, me and my friends, my families, we're having a big laugh about this thing, actually. And then Sue actually told me that, "Hey, it took you that long to get in a cartoon?" Yeah, she was in office for only 2 months. She got a cartoon. She was in a cartoon. So, but all kidding aside now, I really wanted to write a viewpoint on that. But because Mayor Kim did his Merry Monarch thing, I felt more compelled to write about that. And, I kind of took up all my viewpoint time over there. So I'm going to say it right now, and hopefully everyone will understand again, because this is about the 4th time that I've stated this. There are a lot of people who are environmentalists, and they're driven, by it. And I understand that. And many of them were here today. I think we're all environmentalists in one way or another. But more than an environmentalist for me, I'm an attorney. Okay? That's what I am. And when I'm at home, although I like to think that I teach my children about the importance of protecting the environment, more than that, I always tell them these values I want you guys to adhere by. Be fair and be honest. From there, you guys are on your own. But just be fair and honest. So these are things I preach to my children. And because that's what I am. I'm an attorney. We're bound by the law. We're bound by this sense of fairness, sometimes maybe not, in the eyes of the public, but that's what we stand for. This bill, in my opinion, and I've stated it on many occasions, is blatantly unfair. And it offends my sense of fairness, actually, because it singles out a certain class of people, and that's the food vendors. It's as if the food vendors are now joining me in that bowl of that styrofoam bowl, cruising around in Hilo Bay and being responsible for deaths of fish and turtles, birds, other wildlife. Okay, it's not true. It's not fair. I told all of you on the floor one time that if this bill, first of all, I'm not a great fan of styrofoam. I tolerate it, but am I protecting it? Am I here to stand up and say no to the ban because I'm a protector of styrofoam? No. If we have no styrofoam in this world, I could care less. No skin off my back. And I told all of you, if you had a total, absolute ban on styrofoam, which prevented the sale of styrofoam products in stores, Walmart, all the big corporate stores, Target, Costco, and banning all packing materials, which include styrofoam, and for appliances as well. I said I would be more inclined to support something like that. Now I'm going to go on record right now and put you guys to task, anyone who's going to support this bill. I will vote in favor of a total ban of styrofoam products on this island, just to show you that I'm putting my money where my mouth is in terms of fairness. I just don't like that we're picking on food vendors. So we can have people doing their benefit Food sales, they can use styrofoam. I'm not too sure, I haven't really, digested all of the nuances of, the various drafts that we did, but there are other exemptions. To me, you either go all or nothing. So I put you guys to the test right now. If you guys want to go for a total ban right now, I'm for it. Anything less, though, I'm against, especially if it only singles out food vendors. The problem here, and people have touched upon it tangentially, it's education. It's a sad commentary, that we're going to have to blame food vendors for littering. That's on the people. As far as I'm concerned, littering is not even in my vocabulary, and I know it's not in the vocabulary of my kids. So I don't know where all these litters, these things are, coming from. It's people with bad values, quite frankly, and they got to get educated. We talked about Japan. I mean, some of us had been to Japan, and people who are talking about waste management always use Japan. Japan, I told you guys, can't use that as an example because they are all for the good of the people. Everything is for the good of the people. You walk around a train station, Val, you just went to Japan. You walk around a train station, you'll have less receptacles in that whole train station than you're going to have on this whole county building. People are forced to hold their trash. I am forced to hold my trash, looking for a place to throw it. It's all education. It's all a mindset. We're barking up the wrong tree over here if we're only focusing on food vendors. So that's my point. But again, as I said, you guys vote for a total ban, I'm in. I pledge my vote right now.
Thank you.
I've been struggling with this for a little while, and we all hear about how we have to take one step, just one little step. My concern is this one little step is pushing us into a particular product and taking away choices. And so I appreciate what Mr. Chung is saying right now. That's where it becomes unfair, is that we're legislating a choice when I feel strongly that we should have all types of choices. And we heard from a lot of restaurant vendors today, and I'm very closely linked to one. And we made a personal choice, but we were given that opportunity to choose. And my concern is that when we start legislating people's choices, it's a dictatorship. I'm going to not support this at this time only because I want to continue the conversation about the bigger optics on this. I really think the state needs to step in and prohibit all the way across. We're talking about importing stuff to refrigerators and microwave ovens and stereo and big TVs. Those things pollute the oceans and an environment just as much as a styrofoam plate lunch, but 1,000,000 times more. And that's where I'm concerned. It's not about killing fish, all the other commentary. It's about making sure that we have fair legislation and we're not guiding people into a choice, because then we come up with boutique type legislation, and I cannot support something like that, because then we're going to start legislating, you know what? We only want this type of flour Lay's. We're going to start legislating what type of cars. You guys can only buy Fords. That's the slippery slope that I'm concerned about. I am doing this to continue the conversation about how we come up with legislation that's fair for everybody. I teach my kids, closely linked to a restaurant that's made the choice. And I'd like to see how we could actually provide more incentive type legislation. In the back of my mind right now is we've had a lot of stick legislation. We raised real property tax. We had TAT tax kind of shoved down our throat with the legislature. Those are all stick type of legislation. And I just want to do stuff that incentivizes people to make good choices so we can begin to shift the optics for future generations. I really appreciated the kids today, what they were speaking about. We're absolutely right, but we got to incentivize that a little bit more. That's where I'll be standing on this. And again, it's about continuing a conversation to have better legislation that incentivizes good choices, not puts people in a corner with a stick. So thank you.
Councilmember David?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for Mr. I was wondering what you were going, what your comments were going to be, and I see where you're coming from as far as being fair, all or nothing, on a ban, complete ban. But if I can recall, I think that's what the problem or the issues were when this first came out, because at this point in time, I don't think it's possible to do a complete ban, because what we're trying to do is start somewhere in our little county to make an effort, and maybe other counties down the road will see the good in this. And while I appreciate what you're saying as all or nothing, I don't feel like we're at that point for banning styrofoam entirely. I don't like the word ban either, but I do appreciate the work that was done by the Department of Environmental Management, the task force, and this body. I mean, I think we all can agree that this is not an easy decision, and we have pros and cons that make sense on either side of the issue. So for me, I agree with incentivizing behavior also, but that, to me, that issue is not a legislative issue. So what we have before us, in my mind, is something that was worked on very diligently by not only the introducer, but by a department, an entire department, as well as a task force. So I know not everybody's going to be happy, because I know people, a few people that don't support the styrofoam ban. But I also know people that have restaurants on the Kona side that do not use styrofoam by choice. So for me, I believe in appreciation for all the hard work and the difficult position that we're put in, I'm standing by my support in this issue. And, if it doesn't work, then we as the legislative body can take steps to either fix it down the road. So for me, I think I appreciate everything that Aaron Chung says, and also you, Ms. Leloy, but I want to state that I support the effort. Mahalo.
Thank you.
I too will be supporting Bill 13, whichever draft. I guess it'll be draft 4. Like I said, I appreciate the work that's gone into it. I've been a supporter of this from the last term, and while I know it's a small step, but it does make a big difference, and I think we owe it to ourselves, to our island, to the kids, and to the future, to do whatever we can. And yes, bans are harsh, but we are elected and we have a legislation in front of us. We have to make a decision on it. We're policymakers, and this sets policy for our island and for our state. We're not the first to do this. And I think the reasons for not including more products into this legislation have been pointed out to us in the past, and continue to be not possible at this time. So I think as the time moves forward, we will be able to do more and more. There's more and more products available that are substituting products that are not environmentally friendly, and I look forward to seeing what this new generation comes up with. But in the meantime, I'll support the legislation before us. Mahalo.
Thank you. Councilmember Ruggles.
I just also would like to add that in regards to doing a total ban on styrofoam, I don't know if we have the jurisdiction to do that. So I don't know if that is a reason that justifies to not support any sort of mitigation measure against helping get a toxic product out of our environment and out of our bodies. I know that for the state, I mean, there are certain things like the DOE, we don't have authority over the DOE to get them to not use styrofoam. And in the meanwhile, this piece of legislation is consistent with our zero waste policy, the general plan, our integrated resource management plan, our motto, our charter, and our constitution. This is a responsible piece of legislation that takes a toxic product out of the environment and out of the food that we eat. And it's a step in the right direction. We still have a long way to go. And the fact that we can add to it in the future shouldn't stop us from passing this now. And I wholeheartedly support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Richards.
I'm the vice chair of the environmental management, and I have to commend Councilwoman O'Hara for the work she has done on this bill. This has been an exercise in compromise going through the whole event, and I do appreciate the work that's been put in by everyone. Members of the ad hoc committee, and I do, Chair, I do appreciate the fact that I think we did it the right way as far as taking it to ad hoc committee. We didn't waste a lot of council time. We took it to committee to work out the big differences. I think that in and itself was a good thing for us as a council as a whole. I sit up here and I'm listening to my colleagues, and I respect everybody here on the council, and I agree with everything that's been said on both sides of this argument. One of the big problems I had with their initial bill, and Councilwoman O'Hara will acknowledge that, is there were too many exemptions in there, and I wouldn't support the exemptions. So, Councilman Chung, I fully hear what you're saying on the fact that I still am bothered by the fact that if we look at statistics, and that's my background, science, we're talking about less than 1% of a problem being removed by the environment. And my fear is we're going to congratulate ourselves, but really haven't accomplished all that much. And that is my fear. That being said, I do think that doing something is better than doing nothing. And so, and this is a back and forth for me. I have constituents on both sides of this argument, and very passionate on both sides of the argument. But we have to move forward somehow. And so at this point, I think I'm going to think a few more minutes. And so I'm going to yield.
Okay. Any other comments on that first round on the bill as amended? No? Councilmember O'Hara?
Well, thank you. I expected we would still have some debate here on some of these issues. And while I appreciate Mr. Chung's stance on voting against all polystyrene, including rigid polystyrene, which is how it's referred to, and do realize there's a difference between EPS expanded polystyrene, which is your takeout containers, and rigid polystyrene. But I think Ms. Ruggles brings up a good point. I don't know that we have the jurisdiction to tell all manufacturers of products that are being shipped into the Big Island, such as refrigerators and TV screens and everything else that's packed in rigid polystyrene, that's not a go. It's very hard to do a ban like that when you have an island state, because most of our cargo is brought into Honolulu and shipped to the outer islands from there. And I've made this argument on various levels of legislation, such as creating a GMO labeling bill at the county level. I don't see how this is possible for food manufacturers to comply. They ship in food. How would they designate that non-GMO products only go to the Big Island? It makes it very complicated. We would probably create a food desert if we tried to do something like that, because they just wouldn't comply. So I don't think it's possible for us at this point in time to consider banning all polystyrene. Great idea, and I appreciate that you support that. I'm probably the only one on council that has a waste management background. I mean, hands-on waste management background, being the county's first recycling coordinator back in 2003. And I can say from my experience that the litter problem at that time was more extensive than it is even now. And why? Because we were seeing cans and bottles thrown on the sides of the roads. What did we do to incentivize that? We created the High Five program. And while High Five bottles and cans and glass beverage containers only constitute less than 2% of what goes in the landfill, the overall reduction was much more than that. During the 3 years I was recycling coordinator, 03 to 06, we went from a 7% diversion rate up to a 27% diversion rate. And so the High Five program I used as an education element. It was a small step, but it allowed us to educate the public about recycling paper and cardboard and other glass, etc. And I see this one small step in the same manner. It's educating the public about the dangers of polystyrene. We're already seeing industry response. This is a new type of egg container. Now, we've exempted egg containers. Thank you, Mr. Richards. That was a request that came from our ad hoc. But in reality, the industry's already responded. This is number one plastic. We can recycle, easily recycle number ones, twos, and fives. We already do so on this island. Ms. Leloy, you brought up the fact that we're driving people to a single choice. That's not the case at all. There's not only paperware, there's plasticware that is recyclable, there's paperware that is disposable and compostable. And so there's all kinds of different products that are coming to the marketplace. I noticed at Senator Ruderman is here, and I noticed at his store, Island Naturals, they're not any longer serving fresh meat on styrofoam trays with the little diaper thing. They're now packaged in plastic bags that are Ziploc, and you can still see your meat through the plastic. So the industry is responding and being innovative, and we're sending a message by doing this. Hundreds of cities and counties across the nation, most of them on coastal areas, have already banned, done limited polystyrene bans like we're considering here. Maui passed one in June. And I think this is a step in the right direction. It isn't a big financial impact any longer, as has been pointed out by store owners and restaurant owners, et cetera. There are good options out there currently. So it's not like we're driving people and telling them they can only wear, a white jacket. No, it's not that simple. There's still lots of choices out there. So I think that this bill will take us in the right direction. We may need to go further in the future, but some of that might happen at the state level, and let's hope that it does. So that's where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah, of course, there are jurisdictional concerns, but this council voted for a GMO ban. I think I publicly stated, and I wasn't here at the time, but I did publicly state that that thing was certainly going to raise jurisdictional problems. And it did, right? Ultimately, it was, struck down by not one court, but two. So it's not like this body should be afraid of doing things only because it might violate jurisdictional, it might raise jurisdictional concerns, unless we learn from the exercise. Now that I cannot argue already. But, if we are going to argue jurisdiction, that means we're letting off the hook a big number of the potential violators, and we still, again, singling out only a small group. Because even for those guys, the restaurant people, and I'm not going to deal with the trash part, okay, but just, the littering. But even for those people who purchase polystyrene containers at restaurants or other food service places, how many of those things will actually become litter, really? They got trash cans, receptacles. These people take them home. What are they going to do? Throw them outside their house? They're throwing them away. It's just people maybe going to the beach, possibly, and even within that context, I think it's a small fraction of it might have blown away or something. I mean, I can see you guys want to make a small step. And look, first of all, don't get me wrong. I know this thing is going to pass today, all right? I understand that. But I just want to make sure that my position is clear on this thing and that there are other ways of looking at it, not just one. I have a hard time stomaching this jurisdictional argument, so we let off the hook all the big corporations, and then we pick on the little guys. And really, I'm going to go so far as to say this is really a local food issue. All the guys you guys are hitting are people who have had established businesses for over maybe 30 years, 40 years, some of them. Okay? They may respond. I mean, if you give them time, they may respond to these new innovations that they have. Why don't you try educating them and give them a chance? They might respond. I just emailed a person last night, actually, who was in favor of the ban. And I said, and that person said that they don't patronize the businesses that use polystyrene. I said, it's terrific. And I made this quote, that is, and then in parentheses I said, or maybe was, the American way. Okay? Nowadays we try to do it by legislation. We force people to do certain things. Yeah? I mean, why do you get so heavy-handed on this small class of guys, who are just trying to make a go, who have come to us and actually, I think, don't want to come here anymore because they figure maybe it's just a waste of time because nobody's listening to them. But I respect all of you. And I know I'm on the losing side, but I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kanuha.
I speak in support of this, and I do want to thank Ms. O'Hara for doing it the right way. I think we did go ahead and do this the right way, as in going into the ad hoc and definitely sending it back down to the Environmental Management Commission and to the director for comments and considerations of what we were doing. I thought that was a really important aspect of this bill and how we move forward with the lessening use of polystyrene. So I don't have anything too much to say because we've talked so much about it already. But I do want to appreciate being on the ad hoc committee and working through some of the issues that we had and that we faced and coming out with something that is acceptable to me to vote for. I do agree that we had issues the last time when we brought this up about completely banning this, and we had certain individuals saying there was jurisdictional issues about that. I have no idea. I'm not going to bark down that tree, but I think doing something is better than doing nothing, especially with this one, and my constituents agree. So I'm going to be voting in favor of this, and hopefully not spending years on this again, but hopefully the department comes out with some reasonable administrative rules that are acceptable to them and making it easier for them to enforce this law. So Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ruggles.
I just wanted to comment on some of the things that were just said. I believe last term, a few council members, instead of voting for the ban, created an ad hoc committee focused on education, specifically for styrofoam, because they thought that was the more appropriate way of doing it. And I think it was led by council member at the time, Gregor Illigan, and Daniel Paleka. And so I think we've gone down that path, and that I'm just curious. I don't think it would be smart to go ahead with legislation that we're not sure we have jurisdiction for, and then be challenged and have all that time be used for nothing and not be effective in any way. And so that's why I think this is the most appropriate way to go about this, and it is a step in the right direction. And I really appreciate the council members who have addressed or who have made their concerns known, and we're open to having them addressed. So thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Leloy.
I do appreciate everything that's being talked about right here, right now. And I just want to touch real lightly upon the jurisdictional issue, because I remember Senator Ruderman sitting here, and with some form of tongue-in-cheek, I said, we often get unfunded mandates from the state. So it would be real interesting to see if we did it back the other way. So I just wanted to share that. Clearly, we have a movement, and I clearly hear loud and clear. You know, it's one small step in the right direction. So, but again, I think there's a bigger conversation and a bigger need to address our litter and what's being kind of coming to our island state. And that's why I actually am saying no, because I want to continue that conversation about that bigger chunk of trash that really needs to be addressed. And, you know, my district has been carrying that load for a long time. So I don't want people to lose sight of that it is a wonderful first step, but we gotta get to the bigger issues. So thank you, and I yield.
And I'm not sure, Ms. O'Hara, if I thanked you on my first round, but I just I didn't want to not say thank you for all your efforts in this piece of legislation. And finally, I do want to make note that this ordinance doesn't take effect until July 2019. So I think we have enough time to educate ourselves within that period of time and kind of address that issue. So thank you for allowing for that also. I yield, and I'll support this.
Councilmember Richards.
This is about solid waste management, and this bill doesn't truly affect any of that at all, but we've got a bigger problem to deal with. So I just wanted to echo that. Thank you. I yield.
I just wanted to respond to the fact that, yes, this timeline is effective on July 1, 2019. And the reason for that, as many may not understand, this bill tasks the Department of Environmental Management not only with developing administrative rules for the enforcement element, but also developing an education program. And both of those things take time, and in terms of the education, I'm sure, money. And so they have to be able to budget for that. And you know how our budget process works. The departments will, as of next month, be in the process of developing their budgets for 18-19. So we have to think far enough out to not put undue financial pressure on the department, and Director Kucharski is applauding that. So this is why we rolled back the timeline to make that available.
I am supporting this because I do believe, too, it is a step in the right direction. And when we had if we look back at history and the plastic bag ban, and at that time the grocery stores felt we were targeting them as well. But if we look forward now, fast forward, how wonderful the things that they've come up with the grocery store to replace that. They have the paper bags, and then they sell these wonderful bags that we like to carry in our car and see who has the nicest bag now, the reusable bags. But, so we're chipping away at it. It's unfortunate that we have to create laws to do it, because I agree with, like, even Councilmember Chung when he talks about it's our responsibility, as when we go to the stores or when we go to the fast food restaurants, we take these containers. What do we do with it? And that's where the problem lies, a big problem. However, like the plastic bag ban, if that was a way to start, a small way to chip away at it, and now we have till 2019, we can start education in the schools, we can start doing that. But it's a good impact, even if it's a small impact, it's a positive impact in the right direction for our environment. So I'm supporting this. At this time, I guess I better take a roll call on this, Mr. Clerk?
On the motion to pass Bill 13, Draft 3 as amended on first reading, Mr. Chung,
Fish killer says no.
Ms. David,
Aye.
Mr. Kanuha,
Aye.
Ms. Leloy,
No.
Ms. O'Hara, Mr. Richards,
Yes.
Ms. Ruggles, Chair Poindexter. Chair Poindexter, you have 7 aye votes.
Okay, so Bill 13, Draft 3 as amended, passes first reading. Thank you. Yeah, 2 noes. Okay.